Hi guys, welcome to Womenstrual, the series of conversations around the ebbs and flows, literally and metaphorically, of life. Today's episode is very special to me. We have life's real life hitch right here on the couch, global relationship expert extraordinaire, face of a personal favourite, Celebs Go Dating, and also Married at First Sight, which is a hell of a time watching it from the back. I am so grateful and excited to have someone that I actually get the privilege of calling a big brother here today, Mr. C Brunson.
Yeah.
All the sounds of fireworks, everything.
Can I say it's an honor to do this
Oh, thanks.
with you?
I appreciate that.
Before I even feel like I moved to the UK, you were one of the few people that I knew would be my tribe, when I got here.
appreciate that.
So it's really cool to know that now you can't get rid of me.
No, absolutely
I've been here for 6 years. You can't get rid of me.
No, that means a lot. And it was great to be introduced to you. Shout out to Jacqueline Shepherd for that.
Yes.
And that actually leads really nicely into my first statement.
Okay.
US born, UK resident.
Yes.
Was there anywhere else on the table to move to aside from the UK when you guys decided to move here?
Oh, definitely Jamaica. I mean, you can't say U.S. born without saying Jamaica and
Heritage.
U.S. born. That's right. I mean, look at the jacket.
There
Come
we
on
go.
now. It's
There we
go. Because so my mother is Jamaican, and I grew up in Jamaica, Queens.
Okay.
So I grew up in basically what I thought was Jamaica. But fast forward to 2018, my wife and I were going to move to Jamaica. And this is why I always find life is wild. Talk about the ups and downs.
Yeah.
And it's so important to be a student and listen to what is happening in our world and know that sometimes we are being directed. I say I'm being directed by God. Some people say they're being directed by the universe, whatever it may be. But this is, to me, is such an incredible story because in 2018, this is in April, June of 2018. My wife and I say, okay, we're moving to Jamaica for 3 months. We had taken our boys out of school, so we were homeschooling them.
At what age were they?
So they were, oh my God, what's the math on that? They were like 4 and 8, something like that.
Okay.
4 and 8, 4 and 7.
Okay.
So little guys.
Yeah.
And we had taken them out, and now they had already been out of school for over a year.
Okay.
In homeschooling.
Right.
We were homeschooling them.
Right.
And this is before COVID. This is before homeschooling was quote unquote cool.
Yeah.
And it was when a lot of people thought, okay, if you homeschool, then your child has a problem or you have a problem.
Yeah.
But we took them out. And the reason why we took them out is because we had just sold our matchmaking business.
Okay.
And our objective was to go travel the world.
Love it.
And
Love it.
we were like, we're going to travel the world as a family and just, wherever we are, we're going to teach them there. We're going to live in the land. We didn't have lots of money, but we had enough to survive in Jamaica,
Yeah.
And so we had plotted July, August, September of 2018, we would be in Jamaica. We planned everything. My wife is very specific around, even though we didn't yet have the home in Jamaica, she was like, we're packing because we are going.
I love that.
So we knew it was in our mind we were going.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks before we were due to leave, we got a call about a television show in this little place called the UK
Yeah.
called Celebs Go Dating.
Okay.
They had just, they basically needed a co-host for this show, and they saw a YouTube video of mine.
Look at that.
And they, boom.
actually, what YouTube video was it? How long before the call was that YouTube video recorded?
Oh, it was sitting there forever. I mean, it's interesting. All of the projects that I have ever gotten in TV, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them have been a result of YouTube videos.
Look at that.
And not big hit, like hundreds of thousands of people. I'm talking about like 1,000 people watched it, or 500 people watched it. Even my YouTube videos are not heavy, to this day. But that's why I always say it's always about the quality over the quantity, the quality of the viewership.
That's really important.
Yeah.
That's really important. And I think it's even a wider message around the importance of consistency.
Yes.
And also the importance of like when your time comes, the alignment, like it just makes sense because that wasn't a new video.
No, it wasn't a new video, but that's why I say it's important to be a student, because life, we have to be dynamic, but a lot of us are not. We have a very specific goal and we go after that goal relentlessly, which is good. But think about if we had, as a family unit, said, you know what, this opportunity popped up, but no, we said we're going to Jamaica.
Yeah.
These are the 3 months. We took our boys out of school.
Yeah,
We've been
yeah,
preparing.
yeah.
You know, we're going to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Instead, what we did is we took a step back and said, this is interesting. Why were we going to Jamaica? We were going to experience a new culture with our family. Now I'm being given a television opportunity, so I'm being paid. And if we could go experience a new culture as a family,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it doesn't prevent us. So we pivoted, and that was 6 years ago.
Yeah. And off the back of that, any tips for how you know when to do that? Because I think there is absolutely something, I completely agree. I think there's something really powerful about that relentless pursuit after said goal. And it could be just that you just got to trust your gut, or you just got to take the chance, or you've just got to throw yourself into what's new. But how do you know when it's, do you know what? No, we said we're going to Jamaica, so we're going to go.
Yeah.
Versus, we can still get what our core intention was in this new place, but it's not Jamaica.
Yeah.
How do you balance that dynamic?
I believe that we have to focus on being more mindful, being in the moment. So appreciating what's happening in the moment, understanding what's happening in the moment, and taking in what's happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly. You know, we all have heavy days. Like I heard some crazy news in the car, you know, coming over here, where it's like it's bad, but it's not bad, but
Okay.
it's crazy. Like so many things are going on in my day. I know a million things are happening in your day, but still, I am here fully.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the tape on the windows. Like I'm looking at the cameras, the type of cameras. Like you have to stay in the moment, because when you're in the moment, you appreciate what's happening. When you appreciate what's happening, you can then derive lessons from what is happening. And that's how you know, okay, this is a good opportunity to pivot. Most of us don't stay in the moment. I mean,
Yes,
to
you're
go
right.
way obscure with this, but to connect it,
Yeah.
because relationships are my space,
Yeah.
is I just read 2 books from the most wonderful sexologist in the world. Her name is Dr. Karen Gurney.
Okay.
And I then interviewed her.
Nice.
And I asked her about how do we become better at sex, right? Because everyone's got a different idea.
Yep.
It's like, pop this pill,
Do
drink
this.
this, exercise.
Yeah.
I was like, do yoga, because
Yeah.
that helps me.
Yeah,
Like, what
yeah,
do
yeah.
we do? She said, the most important thing that you can do is learn to be in the moment.
Interesting.
And that is going to increase your ecstasy and your pleasure
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
You
yeah,
have to
yeah.
learn, and most of us can't. The
Yeah.
world isn't set up, for that.
Just to narrow in.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So the moment, that's how you know when to pivot, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. And that just transcends every circumstance. And I think you're absolutely right. We're not conditioned to think about one thing. Like even this morning, I had an intention to focus solely on this conversation this morning. So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to, there's loads of other tasks. I could have done it in between time. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on what is happening today in the main event of today.
Yes.
And I did that. And I literally remember myself walking out of my bathroom and saying, Can, well done for staying focused.
Nice.
Because I'm not usually somebody that, I guess all of us have got that element of like, there's a 10-minute gap here. Let me just try and fit this task in.
Yep.
Or let me just try and call this person back. Or let me just try and quickly do these emails. But actually, I found it to be a lot more productive to be present.
Yes.
And I think there is a missing piece of conversation around the productivity of being present.
Oh, yeah.
Because it changes everything. And I don't feel like when I'm not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. It changes everything. And I'm so scared for so many of us now, especially as you look at the younger generations, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alphas, because you could see how concentration is so hard. My My oldest is now, he turned 13 now. And that's how long we've been here. He's 13.
Jeez.
And it's interesting because this kid can't watch a television show without having a second screen. It's like, it's impossible for him. And so I've literally seen him watching a movie. Like, we'll have a family night, we're watching a movie. He has his cell phone, right, his mobile device, and he has his iPad. So he's got three screens, and he's working all three screens. It's like, yo, you can't even stay in the moment.
Yeah.
You cannot watch one screen.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
too. And so I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
And I mean, to some degree, there's something great about being able to juggle multiple things at one time, but everything in the right moment.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's not. I think I look at my godchildren, it's the same. I even look at myself sometimes, it's like, sometimes I actually end up just going like this on the table, thinking my phone's there when I'm doing something else, because I'm so used to having devices and things near me.
But see, I think this is the great myth. The great myth is that we can do multiple things at one time. You can have three screens and you can multitask. In actuality, what the science tells us is that there's a very small percentage, like 2% of people who can function. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're exerting what it's called a task switch cost. So if you are focused, it's like, say, it's movie night.
Yeah.
Everyone's watching a movie. We're watching Planet of the Apes, which was our movie night. We're watching Planet of the Apes. And boom, his phone goes, bzz, 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 and it's one of his boys, right? And he looks down at his phone. The moment he does that, he now has to switch into, okay, who was it that sent me this WhatsApp? All right, this is the person's name. All right, what is the message? So he's now not just switched, but he had to exert extra energy to now like recalibrate to this thing, this device. Then if he just literally just says, oh, and then he turns back to the screen, now he has to recalibrate. He has to spend a little extra energy to try to refocus. Okay, this was the movie. I missed 3 seconds, but this probably happened. That's task switch costs.
Right.
If you are switching from thing to thing to thing, or just thing to thing, you're exerting extra effort that you could be allocating to
Just
the
one
thing.
thing. Yeah. You know what? You're right. And the science tells us that.
Yes.
And I know that you're big on data in it and it making scientific sense. So yeah, and it does make sense. When I watch, even when you watch a child eat and try and watch something on YouTube, the constant instruction is like, just eat.
Right.
Like, and also that can be paused. Like, let's also be fair about that.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about just being here.
Yes.
And yeah, I think there's something really beautiful about just being here. And in terms of being here, UK-wise, what would you say are some of the biggest cultural differences you have found in living in the UK versus living in the States?
Oh, man. I mean, how long do you have?
3, give me your top 3.
Oh, man. Okay, this is so good. Top 3. One, probably by far, is how prevalent class is in the UK, and how it doesn't exist to the same level in the US, but how almost the entirety of the UK circles around class. I didn't get it, I didn't understand it until I got here. And you begin to see how accent discrimination, education, family background, how all of those things relegate people. And I saw a lot of this in a lot of data. I started doing a research study 3 years ago around how we discriminate via accents when it comes to dating, especially in the UK. Wow. You know, it's like...
You know what I'm saying? Well, but I completely agree.
Yes. And so in the US, there's class, obviously, but it's more economic based in the US. It's like, oh, you have 100 million? Okay, you're okay.
This is sounding great.
Yeah, you're good. Like it does. Like here, it's like, oh, you have 100 million, but working class, you talk a certain way. You know, you still. So class is something that still blows my mind to this day. That's one. A second is gun culture is not prevalent here. You know, there are guns here. We have to be intellectually honest. There are guns that are still floating around, but nowhere to the degree of guns in the United States. And it was so apparent to me when my youngest, who came here right before, when we went back about a year, 2 years ago, so say he's 9 years old, he's used to being in the UK. He's used to not seeing guns. We fly into Richmond, Virginia, where my wife is from.
Okay.
Walk into an elevator, and in the elevator walks a woman with her one bag of groceries, and on her hip is her handgun. And my son did exactly what you're doing. He was like, oh, and he had this poor kid, he had a pizza, and when he saw the gun, he turned the pizza like this, the pizza slid down, hit the floor. He was so scared. He was like you could tell he was like, don't shoot me, don't shoot me, don't shoot me. That notion is not here.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. I don't have that feeling like I did in the U.S. In the U.S., if the police pulled me over, I would have the feeling like I could be shot and killed.
Right now. Yeah.
We lived in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., carjackings happen all the time. Like you always knew if an incident is happening, if it kicks off, a gun is probably going to be involved. A fight. Always, you would see people at the club, at the bar, or whatever, get into a fight. Inevitably, somebody would say, "I'm going to my trunk to get my gun." Like that was always part of it.
Insane.
It's insane, isn't it? And here, that's not part of it.
No.
You know, so that the fact that there's no gun culture, and the third, last but definitely not least, is I want to talk about dating. There's a theory I've been working on.
Okay.
I believe that there is no harder place in the world for a black woman to lock down a committed relationship.
Thank you guys for listening to today's podcast. We are finished.
Yes. I'm like, I've done enough of the back research and observation on it to see that there's a whole intersection of race, racism, colonialism, xenophobia, right? Because you have so many black women coming in from Jamaica, Ghana, West Africa, whatever. And then also the percentage of numbers, the small percentage of numbers. People don't realize how few black people live in the UK. And then also how impactful Windrush was. We don't talk about that enough. I know a lot about Windrush. My grandfather was a part of the Windrush generation. And what I find interesting, but it's not talked about, was that when my grandfather came over to the UK, he was brought into Liverpool. And he came over from Jamaica. Yeah. And when he came, it's the late 1940s, right? And we generally know, okay, they were all duped.
Yep. Absolutely.
They were all lied to. It was like, you're going to come over here and there's going to be lots of opportunity. Yeah. But the part of the story that is probably the most detrimental, that is typically left out or unaware, because people are, there's a lot of ignorance walking around here, is that a lot of those men, like my grandfather, left families behind. He left his wife behind. He left his children behind.
They asked the men to come first.
Okay, so he comes over and he leaves that. So that automatically creates a massive void in the family. Yeah. That's one. Secondly, is he comes over, and then because this system is based on class, and he now comes in at the lowest level of class as a black man. What is the only way for him to move up in class? It's not about how much money. Yeah. It's not about does he get super educated. It's not about the job that he gets. What's the only way?
To integrate with the people here.
Exactly. To integrate, in particular, is to secure a white girlfriend and then wife. That becomes the only method to not just come into the society, but to get a step up, to get a step up. And we're all trying to get a step up. Yeah. After all, you brought over tons of guys that are trying to get a step up, right? Yeah. So this becomes the modus of operation. Yeah. Now, what's another way to get a step up? have a child.
Yes. Yeah.
You have a
Yeah.
child. You have a mixed race child. That gives you another step up. You are automatically have put your child above you
Yeah.
with regard to class.
Gosh,
So
this is deep.
this is what I'm saying. This is when I sat back. Man, I drank a lot of Red Stripe one night, and I was like, "Yo,
Yes.
this is blowing my mind." Because you know what's so wild about that? That's 2 generations ago.
Yeah, it's not far.
That's just 2
It's not far.
generations. That's folks living
now.
right now.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the system. That's the structure.
Crazy.
And then it gets worse because then you say, okay, so then who do you not want in that system? You don't want black women in that system.
Yeah.
Because that's going to mess up the class
Yeah.
mobility. That's going to mess all these things up.
Him,
Right.
yeah.
It's one of those where it was this system was not structured right for black women
elevation of
to
the
get
black
out
women.
here to be elevated, especially lifted up and cherished in relationships.
Yeah.
Right. This is, I mean, where does it happen? It happens typically like I have a black wife because when you have people who move in
Yeah.
and we celebrate each other, I'm
Yeah.
celebrating her, I'm lifting her up.
Yeah.
And but there's so few of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Trust me.
But this is, so you talked about it. You asked me for 3 things.
Yeah.
That's
They're deep 3, but they're
the
really
third thing.
important. That's really important.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it doesn't lean into what I said to you off camera at first, but it does amplify the difficulty that black women generally have in existing in their truth and in their glory and light and mobility in this world.
Yes.
Especially in Black Britain. Candice Brathwaite posted something on her Instagram when she went to Jamaica, and she said, you know what, black women, brown-skinned women, dark-skinned women, you're not ugly, you're just not at home.
Yes.
And I cannot tell you how much that like hit me here, because I just thought this is a light bulb moment for so many of us. There's so many of us that go on holiday to the Caribbean particularly, and you're walking down the road, and before you even got to the end of the street, and it's not catcalling.
Right.
It's genuine compliments. It's genuine appreciation,
Yeah.
and it's genuine like gaze.
Yes.
Of like, wow, you're so beautiful. Wow, look at your skin. You're pretty like literally.
Yes.
It's a completely different experience. And essentially what she was speaking to was the importance of like not allowing Western beauty standards to inform how you feel about yourself.
Right.
Because one, there's a big world out there, there's loads of people out there, and you're going to be attractive to someone. It's just important, and it links actually to one of the most interesting parts of your book, actually, the 6 dimensions of psychological well-being.
Yes.
In the environment piece.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Environmental mastery.
Yes, and that of all of those 6, I actually think environmental mastery is the one that I'm like dialing into most right now.
Yes.
Because the other 5, I feel like I don't really subscribe to the feeling of being there. I think you're always like evolving and working towards the next version of yourself. But I think that one is the one that I am most committed to at this time.
Yes.
I think being in an environment, not only creating one and kind of curating one where you are, but also like, what does it actually look like in real time?
Yes.
Is it the UK? Is it somewhere else in the UK? Is it somewhere else in the world? What environment cultivates the best version of life that I can kind of see in my head? And
absolutely.
yeah, I think that's essential.
You know, what's interesting is that's almost a full circle moment, because you asked me originally about moving. That was part of the drive, is that we wanted to control our environment.
Yeah.
We wanted to be in a place that was conducive for the young men that we wanted to raise in this world.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so interesting that you talk about environment, because environment is everything. It's what shapes our beliefs, what shapes our ideas, and what shapes our standards of beauty. You know, coming here was so interesting to me because, you know, I grew up in black neighborhoods, right? I grew up with black grandparents, black aunties, black people, matter of fact, Jamaica, Queens, thought the whole world was black until I left.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it is like that.
and like entrenched in black culture, black books, black films, black everything. And so my beauty of standard, it's interesting. I always thought black was the most beautiful to me. Like I had a black Cabbage Patch Kid. Like it was like
my mom did things like that.
Yes, it was like that was to me. That was
The epitome.
that was it, right? So when I got to the UK, what was the first thing that blew my mind is on these television shows where you'll have so we'll have men, right? And to me, I was like, okay, we have a black man. I'll never forget this. This was on one of the first shows I did. There was a man who, I like blonde, I like blue eyes. I was like, all right, that's cool. But do you like black women? Like I was straight. I was like, but he was like, yeah, but, and then what hit me was he didn't even categorize himself as a black man. He didn't identify as a black man. He identified, like in the U.S., we really don't call mixed race a thing. Like you're black.
You're black, yeah.
Right? You might be light skinned, but you're black.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I realized that he subcategorized himself. And then when I explored how he grew up, who he grew up with, I realized he didn't grow up with any bit of blackness.
Right.
So then I thought, okay, I can't fault him now for saying, that's not my type, blonde is my type, because this is the culture, this is the environment that he grew up in. So to your point, to Candace's point, to you mentioned who went to Jamaica, is that this is the reason why this is the reason why environment is so important. And we have to proactively go after our environments because that's the only way we will protect our peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important.
The fact that environment is so important because it makes such a big difference to so much.
And environment, and also it's always about perspective. So for example, I live in South London. I live right around the corner from where we're filming. And do you know how many people, because I normally, when I'm filming my projects, I'm in Central London, North London, that kind of thing. And when I'm like, they say, where do you live? I say, South London. And a lot of people are like, oh, boy, you live. I was like, it's the best place in the world, right? And I start breaking down why it's the best place. It's so diverse, the best food, like all this stuff. And I realized that if they came here to South London and they lived here, this would not be a conducive environment for them because of their perspective. So it's also about your perspective within that environment, or your perspective of your environment. Which is why people say perspective is 90%.
100%. 100%. And literally, as I was walking from the train station, I thought to myself, I wonder what type of woman I'd be if I lived here. Because it's literally, as I got out the train station, Brixton feels like a completely different place to where I got off the train in Bushell Park.
Okay.
It is a completely different life.
Yes.
And that's why environment shapes so much. And I also find that South Londoners are the most patriotic Londoners that there are. Anywhere you go and you're from South London, the whole place erupts. Everyone's cheering. I just think, wow, you guys, people that are from South London love being from South London.
Yeah, I love it. Like, to the point where it's my favorite place in the world.
Really?
And I was born in New York. And I was born in New York City.
That's a big favorite place to have.
Yes.
In comparison.
It is my favorite place. And it's not just my favorite place. It's my wife's favorite place.
Really?
My boys love it. We love it. Like, I'm ready for this, get the South London tattoo right now. Like, I love it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's incredible. Can I brag about South London real quick?
You guys always do, but go on.
All right. So this is what I think is one of the most incredible things about South London.
Okay.
Is that if you look at the area just between where we are, so say Brixton, Crystal Palace, Herne Hill, Peckham, Dulwich, Norwood, this area, it is the most diverse area in the world with a population of over 1 million people. So yes, there are over 200 languages spoken in this.
You're joking.
In this area. So it's like we are our own nation.
It
You
feels
know,
like it.
we're like the United Nations, here.
Okay.
And you get everything from the culture.
Yeah.
You get the foods, you get the art, you get the religion that comes from the culture. You get it all.
Yeah.
And I think that what South London means to me is not being ignorant. Like the world eventually
Yeah.
is going to look how South London looks.
That is wow.
People don't want to admit this, but the UK is going to look like how South London looks circa 2050,
I agree.
2075. They've
agree.
already done the stats on it,
Yeah,
which is why you
I
have
agree.
the national front and you have all these places because they know what's
What
happening.
happened? Yeah.
And it's
What's
yeah,
yonder? Yeah.
yeah.
No, South Londoners love South London, but that's a really interesting statistic. Around 200 languages. That's insane.
Yeah, it's good.
That is actually insane. And
good.
dialing in a little bit further into main differences from a healthcare perspective, naturally, in terms of this podcast, it is about periods and it is about women's health.
Yes.
From a healthcare perspective, what have you found are some of the differences, aside from paying for it in the States and not paying for it here, or what if you're not private, what have you found to be some of the main differences with regards to healthcare here?
You know what's really interesting is the way that healthcare is promoted
Okay.
by governments. In the U.S., what a lot of politicians point to is they say, look at the UK. They got it right. They have universal health care, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, they got it right. They did what we should be doing. Look at how inept we are. We have to pay these extremely high fees for insurance, blah, 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 right? But I am a part of the system here, right? I'm a part of the NHS.
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of people who have like different ailments.
Yeah.
And it's not 90%, it's not 95%, it's unanimously, they say, I wish I can go to the US for this. And I think what has happened is that the perception has been like the perception of healthcare has been brought to a almost unachievable, a place here. Now it's interesting. There's certain procedures and certain things that I know people would prefer to have in the UK versus the US, especially around childcare and A&E around childcare. Whereas in the States, you'd say, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to giving birth, no, it's not. We're not doing what we need to do in the UK. When it comes to, I just spent a long time on another podcast talking about in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing it right here in the UK. The US has got it right.
Yeah.
And more so, what I'm talking about is the care, support, and appreciation for the cycles, for the loss of children, right? That piece is missing here.
Absolutely.
And it could be, one factor could be because it's such a massive system here, because it has to be, because you're caring for everybody.
Yeah.
So pros and cons on it, for sure, pros and cons.
I think that I'd never had to, in all of the places I've traveled, I've actually never had to engage in a healthcare system anywhere else. So as much as I think there are loads of issues with the NHS and the processes in and around getting healthcare quickly, efficiently, accurately, because I think that's really key. I actually don't have somewhere to compare it to in terms of a personal lived experience. Yeah. So I try not to bash the NHS too much unless I had something to say, well, actually, when I went here, it was miles better. But I think in a lot of ways, paying, because I know some people who've got private healthcare, and even in looking at how they are treated in their processes. So, for example, my cousin went to Turkey 2 weeks ago and sprained his ankle.
Okay.
And I thought, that is my worst nightmare, to be somewhere where the first language is not English and I have to engage in healthcare.
Yes.
So I think, am I going to come away with no ankle? because I can't communicate what's happened. But obviously, everybody speaks English. And he said, honestly, it was like having private healthcare.
Yeah.
I went in and I was literally seen in and out in 20 minutes.
Yes.
And I said, that is actually what healthcare should be like.
Yeah.
Because I think often, and I know that a lot of black people, and I kind of dial it further into a lot of people, black people I know, would prefer not to go to the doctors.
Yep.
They prefer to just, you know what, I just take granted, they'll dial into some health, some like nutritional things, but I do think there's something to be said for a medical professional who knows anatomy, who knows bone structure, who knows like organs, to be able to identify a problem that's happening. But I do think there's a level of distrust that comes with the NHS for whatever reason. I think people are a little bit afraid of, I don't know, maybe what they might hear when they go to the doctor, or what they might experience, or the amount of tablets that they might be kind of given. But I do think there's a lot to be said for how inundated the NHS are, and people are still able, granted it takes a long time, able to get through the system. And I think that's to be applauded, because as much as we did the 7 o'clock clap in COVID, do you remember when we did that? We did like a clap for the NHS when it was COVID every night at 8 o'clock or something.
Oh,
were you
okay.
here when you were here?
I was here for
We did
during
like,
COVID,
every
yeah.
night. Everyone came outside their house and was clapping for the
yeah,
NHS.
yeah. I remember. I remember the support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as
definitely.
much as I think, okay, that doesn't help, but what I do think is that I think that the people who work in the NHS aren't celebrated enough, despite the problems within the NHS at the moment.
Oh no, not whatsoever. I agree. I think all the entirety of the staff is on a lower pedestal than healthcare staff in the United States. You know, it's like I'll never forget when we actually moved to South London. And we were interacting with all of these like doctors, right? Because like my boys, they eventually we would put them in school.
Yeah.
A lot of their parents were physicians, and I was like, "Oh wow, you're a doctor! Oh my gosh, you're a doctor!"
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my, yeah." I was like, "You're a doctor! Oh my God, you're a doctor! This is crazy!" Right?
And
they're like,
cool.
whatever. But then one of my son's friends, who is a physician, she then went to the U.S. And then she came back and she said, "Now I know, Paul, why you did that.
Yeah.
We place our medical professionals
High
in the U.S.
pedestal.
High. They're paid an extreme, much more than the physicians here. They're looked upon higher, and so yeah." And I think the challenge is because it's such a massive system. You know, what people I think have the biggest issue with is the system.
Yeah.
It's not the individuals. It's the system and the inefficiencies in the system.
Yeah. And I think it's a wider conversation, but I do think that there's the inefficiencies are actually I believe are deterring people from tapping in the first place, because they don't think that they're going to get seen to efficiently. So you know what? I'd rather just deal with it myself, despite looking to Dr. Google for answers instead, which is like the rabbit hole that never ends.
Oh yeah.
And dangerous as well.
Yeah, and we're not physicians.
Yeah.
You know, but I always have empathy for people who don't want to go, because it's a whole range. It's like we're not too far removed where people of color were being experimented on.
Absolutely facts.
Right, syphilis being pumped into our system from the government.
Yeah.
Right, so we're not too far from that. All the way to, we know that there is an extreme amount of malpractice that happens. There's been lots of studies that associate malpractice with racism or sexism, and so you have all of that.
Yeah.
And then you also have this, and I think rightfully so, good. You see more of a buying into Eastern medicine. You know, I think the Rastas had it from the beginning.
Yeah.
They were called wild and crazy in the 70s. And look at it. It's like everything's ital, you know? And so, I think that we have to. So I have, in the U.S., for years, I saw quote unquote Western physicians.
Okay.
But then I switched about 8 years ago to an Eastern physician who was a MD, so he's a medical doctor, but then he switched into more homeopathic, and he changed my life.
Really?
He changed my life. Yeah. So I bought into into the other.
Yeah. And I think that's something that for me the Gynae Project is really, I'm really passionate about doing, because even with my own menstrual cycle, despite having a procedure and countless medication and like loads of tablets and unanswered questions and all the things, after all of that happened, I did feel like I had to still take a lot of my personal health into my own hands. Granted, it's our responsibility anyway, but my thought was that after all of that pathway had been taken, I'd kind of be like skipping to my loo and be fine and there'll be no problem. But when I really noticed a difference is when I really paid more attention to my nutrition, to my like level of exercise, and stress management. And I think the body generally, especially living in such a fast-paced like city, is under a lot of stress without knowing it. And then partnered with a cycle that happens every month that naturally sends your hormones a little bit left. I have found that it's not one shoe fits all, and I'm not here to say that I'm a professional and I know this for fact, but I can only speak to my body and what's happened. But I definitely think the Eastern way of managing health it needs to far outweigh the Western, because I cannot attest to it more in terms of the transition that I have felt and found with making more of an adjustment into those elements of control that I can take and the advocacy and like agency I can take over my own body in those areas. In terms of Eastern practices, did it include like dietary tips, exercise tips, mindful tips, all of those things?
All the above. Everything from restrictive eating, right? So some people call it intermittent fasting, right? Everything from that to, consuming, a whole lot less, like almost no sugar, like,
Black people struggle with that though. We always want something sweet.
Yeah, but I mean, this is now over time because I was there. I was drinking Kool-Aid all the time, back in the day. But once you fast and then you come off of a fast, you could have a mango and it's super sweet. It feels like it's sugar, So the no sugar. I drink barley grass every day.
Oh wow, what is that?
It's called green magma.
Okay.
Game changer.
Really?
It's barley grass. It's basically like wheatgrass.
Okay.
And I have that every day. I have curcumin every day. I have tons of vitamin C, D3. I mean, I'll never forget when COVID properly hit. I picked up the phone and called my doctor, Dr. Shamim, back in the States of the Eastern. And I was like, break it down. What do I do? He was like, don't worry, do blah, 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 blah. And everything he said, and I have a video. This is because I've documented this, is because I was filming Married at First Sight at the time. And right when it hit, right when they did the quarantine, I remember everyone was freaking out. Everyone was like, oh my, what do we do? And we were on set. I called Dr. Shamim. I spent an hour. He's like, do these 15 things, have these vitamins. The number one thing he said was have D3. He was like, have D3.
Okay.
I have a video right during that time of me going online. I'm like, look, I just talked to my homeopathic doctor. I'm not telling you to do this, but this is what he told me to do, and I will be doing this. And the countless early comments are like, that guy's a quack. How is D3 going to do anything? Blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be on here. Right? That's the first week, 2 weeks. And then you go back and you look at the comments that happened several weeks later. Damn, Paul, you were right. D3 was the man.
There we go.
He just had it.
Yeah.
He had it.
And I think those things are to be celebrated and not shunned. But I do think the world is shifting towards those type of techniques when it comes to dialing in on those things. In terms of menstruation generally, how much do you think men, and I can ask you specifically, know about it? How much do you think was shared with you in school, through your relationship with your wife? How much of it do you think you know?
Well, now, a lot.
Okay, good.
Growing up, close to nothing.
Yeah.
My boys know a lot. My boys are going to the store at 13 and 10. They're buying tampons.
Love it.
They're buying pads. They understand what is happening. They understand that was an egg in there. You know, like we talk about it openly. And we talk about, okay, mommy's on her cycle. Here's what this means.
Yeah.
You know, society structures it so that men are not to, you know, the patriarchy is still heavy. And the idea is that that's something that should be talked about over there. And actually don't even talk about that in public. And let's just ignore it. But in actuality, I think when you have, you know, strong women who say, no, this is a part of life.
Yep.
This is not just a part of my life. This is a part of our life.
Yeah.
Then it's openly talked about.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm really proud that my wife has led in our family.
Yeah.
And our boy, it's not like a shame, you know. But there are many topics in our household that I think in other households would be considered shameful, like people talking about sex or whatever, that we talk about openly.
Yeah. I think that's important because, as you rightly said, it's definitely part of our lives. And even if you don't have a wife, you're likely to have a sister, a cousin, or a female friend, or at least a female colleague. And I think just understanding what's going on in the female body affects us all.
Yes.
Especially as givers of life. It's really important that more men actually understand what's going on. Not necessarily to all of the details, because I think that's going to take a lot of unpacking, because I think a lot of women don't even know what's going on in their bodies. But I think it's really admirable and important that men are integrated into the conversation. In terms of kind of switching the conversation very slightly and kind of dialing back into health, how do you think do you think there's an impact on how women seek romantic relationships if they're not healthy? And by healthy, I mean they don't necessarily feel great about themselves physically. They don't feel like they're necessarily dialing into nutrition and diet. They don't really feel like, or they have a gynae problem.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something psychological around women's pursuit of relationships when they feel like they don't fit the perfect structure of what a woman should be like?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in the book, what I've tried to do is paint the picture that we've been a bit misled as to what we should be looking for in a partner, what we should be bringing to the table. You know, at every event, I always start with a quiz, and I say, okay, in order to have a strong relationship, the strongest relationship, should you have A, shared values? Should you have B, high well-being? Should you have C, shared humor? Or should you have D, strong sexual compatibility? And unanimously, in every country, I've done it in multiple countries, multiple different audiences, unanimously people say shared values.
I would say well-being.
Then that's what it is.
Yeah.
But normally it's shared values, then it's either sexual compatibility, shared humor, and well-being is at the bottom. Well-being is the most important. Well-being dictates how we show up, why we show up, who we allow into our lives. One example is that if you have high well-being, and well-being is holistic, to your point of Carol Riff's 6 dimensions of psychological well-being. So it is about our self-esteem, self-acceptance. It's about our physical health, right, as well. It's about our emotional health. This is well-being. If you have low well-being, who are the type of people that you think are going to be most want to be in your life? The narcissist.
Dark tetrad boys.
The dark tetrad. The whole dark tetrad boys, right?
I've had one before.
Right?
Scary.
But they want to be in your life. Why? Because you're easily manipulated and controlled. If you have high well-being, do they want to be in your life? No, you're too much work.
You're hard. You're too hard.
You're too hard
to manage.
Yeah, you're too much.
Yeah.
Right? So look at that. Just look at that. Also, when you begin to look at the science around this, it's so interesting because the higher well-being we have, the less desire we have for what's considered to be traditionally attractive.
So does this mean that the better you are in self, you're less concerned about a man or a woman that looks good, and you care more about personality?
Yeah, you're less concerned about someone who the public thinks looks good. You know they look good.
Interesting.
So the best example I can give is, okay, you know how Spike Lee looks.
Yeah.
Do you think Spike Lee is an attractive guy?
I'm a different type of woman because
Okay.
I actually do.
Okay.
And the reason I think he's good looking is because it kind of links onto social capital.
Okay.
And this theory I've got in my brain around like the success effect, which is my idea that I think that the more successful you become, the more attractive you become.
Okay.
Irrespective of whether you're quintessentially attractive.
Okay.
And because of all of those theories in my brain, I think Spike Lee's attractive.
Okay, so you think Spike Lee is attractive. Do you think that the public, most people in the public, put him as physically attractive?
No,
You think most people would say no?
probably not.
Okay, so you are in the same category as my wife.
Okay.
My wife is who really underscored this concept because my wife thinks Spike Lee is one of the most beautiful
Really?
men to ever walk this
No
earth.
way.
Yes, yes. She thinks he is perfection.
No way.
Yeah, yes. And I would think, like, all right, is she trolling me? Like,
What's happening
I
here?
don't understand. What does that mean about me?
Me?
What is it? Right? What's going on?
Yeah.
And what I realized after I did more research, it took me many years,
Yeah.
and I realized that what it is that my wife has such high well-being. She truly does. Such high self-esteem that she doesn't care about externally what the world is that the world has to validate this man for her.
Okay.
She was like, I just look at him and I like how he thinks.
Yeah.
I like his height, right? I like these things about him. And
That's so interesting.
as a result, then what does that mean? It means that that's the reason why you see people who have the highest well-being are with people who are considered not traditionally attractive. But then what's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is that the lower well-being you have, the more you need external validation. The more you care about all of the attributes that the world deems as good. I need a man with big buys and thighs, like whatever it may be, only because that's what the world says, because you're looking for the world's validation.
Yeah.
So well-being is incredibly important to how we show up, why we show up, who we allow into our lives.
Yeah, I think it is essential. It is essential. But what I also have found is that I have paid more attention to my well-being definitely in the last 3 or 4 years. But I have historically been a woman in terms of dating who, my friend always says, what painting does she quote? He's no Mozart. She always says, like, he's no Mozart, so he's no, like, exceptional person. But, like, I've quintessentially always gone for men who've got fantastic personalities.
Okay.
Like, and they haven't always been, and she also says, he's no oil painting. So, like, not the, like the definition of an attractive man.
Okay.
I've not necessarily always gone for someone that, by world standards, would be considered that.
Okay.
But I also think my well-being then wasn't as high as it is now. So my question is, was there something about maybe my self-esteem, which is why I felt like I couldn't date a man that was like, oh, so lovely.
Yeah.
Versus choosing to maybe not date a man that's like, oh, so lovely for well-being reasons now. Because I'm not so, I know I can have that man, but I choose to have someone that's different.
Yes. So there's a concept in evolutionary psychology called mate value.
Okay.
And mate value shows up whether we want a long-term partner or a short-term partner, but mostly when we want a long-term partner.
Yeah.
And when research is done around mate value, what they find is so interesting. It's that on average, men perceive their mate value to be higher than what it actually is. And women perceive their mate value to be lower than what it actually is. Now, what is mate value? Mate value is essentially all the things that we bring to the dating market.
Okay.
So if you were, and this sounds very blunt to say, but it is what it is. It's like if you were to almost assign a value to us, like you think about stocks.
Yeah.
And stock goes up and down. And if a stock is attractive, if the company's making lots of money, it has a lot of future potential, right? If you look at us all as stocks, and we're all in a stock market, a dating market.
Okay, I like this picture.
What would the value be? Now, what would your value be? Now, we all have different value based on a myriad of different things. So where we live, right?
Yeah.
Who we are where we live, because we talked about that, being in the UK as a black woman, right?
Yeah.
Versus, say, being in Jamaica as a black woman. Our education, how much like social status we have, what our education is, whether or not we have children,
Yeah.
you know, how kind and resilient and,
Yeah.
and open-minded, all of these things, hundreds of different, all of this adds up to our quote unquote mate value.
Yeah.
Now, most women see themselves as having less than what they actually have in value. They see themselves,
believe that.
so on a scale from 0 to 10, you could be an 8. Everything you bring could be an 8, but you see yourself as a 6. Now, what does that mean when it comes to a partner? What it means is that you're willing to accept another 6. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. A lot of those men,
I think they're like 10.
who are the 6s, are actually 4s.
Oh, it gets silly.
They're actually 4s, but but
crazy.
remember, they think they're higher.
Yeah.
So they're coming to the table,
Yeah.
showing, demonstrating that they have more, they can do more for you, and right. So here you are, an 8. You're an 8.
I'm an 8.
with a 4.
Oh.
You know what I mean? This is
This is it. I believe you. I believe you. I believe you. I've seen it.
Yeah, this is. I mean, there's lots of challenges that we have when it comes to relationships, but that is distinctly one. Mate value is distinctly one.
Yeah, I think it's yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, yeah,
I've been there.
yeah,
I've been there and I've seen it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, he's the 4. Like, you should be happy to be with me. And you're like,
I have
hold on for a
been there.
second.
Hold on a minute. And it's literally like when I really deeped, hold on a minute. And you know what? It's often like friends and loved ones who affirm your value.
Yes.
Like people say things like, I wish you could see yourself how I see you. You know that statement. And even in understanding that more in my own life and seeing it reflected in other people's lives, it often is that question of like, wait, hold on a minute. He thinks I should be so happy to be with him.
Right.
But actually, he's the one with the catch.
Right.
Because I'm an 8.
Right.
And you're a 4.
Right.
But you're trying to convince me that I'm the one that should be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Right. Right.
Dark tetrad.
Yeah, the dark tetrad. Although, you know, the dark tetrad.
Is that dark tetrad? Is it? Am I pushing it?
No, you're pushing it. You're pushing it. Yeah. Because I was going to say, hold on for a second. Because it's a small percentage of men. It's like 11 to 15%.
Okay.
You know, so on average, it's a small percentage.
Okay.
It could just be, it's unfortunately a big reason, or big way that men are socialized. But also, too, is I don't want to put all men in that category because the majority.
That's important to do, yeah.
The majority of men, and I know people are going to push back and say, Paul, you crazy for this. But no, the majority of men are great guys. Not good. The majority are great guys. And you're looking at me like, oh, I don't know about that. The majority of men are great guys. I think some of the challenges that we have as just being humans is that dark tetrad that you're talking about, the 11 to 15%, those are the ones who excel at dating. They're the best. There's studies around it. Like, they're the best. And why? Because they'll lie to you. They'll say anything that they want, that you want to hear. Also, aesthetically, they're the most aesthetically pleasing.
They're mostly good looking.
They're the ones in the gym hitting it all the time because they know this is going to attract other folks. They are adept at love bombing. They know how to be smooth, deliver their lines, really wrap you in, isolate you from your family, manipulate you. So one is a lot of the dating and a lot of the men having sex are in that category. So that's one thing that we have to understand. Another thing that we have to understand is that whether or not we want to accept this as a society is that we haven't equipped men with how to emote.
That's true.
When I grew up, so when I was my boy's age, it was standard, don't cry.
Yeah.
It was like, be a man, man up, don't cry, be like that. So that's not that long ago, like thinking about the earth, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of work. That's just a little bit. We have a lot of work to do with our men. And then also, what we're facing right now is we're facing a I don't want to call it a battle. We're facing a discussion around roles
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Yeah.
What does it mean now that you have out-educated me, that you make more money than me, and that you will have all of that for the rest of your life? Like,
Yeah.
what does that mean to me now
Yeah.
in a world that I was taught that I am to provide for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. What does that mean?
Yeah. How does that show up now? What happens?
Exactly. What do we do about that? And so we have to talk and discuss and resolve all these things.
Yeah.
But I think I will say until somebody can present me some evidence, and I've seen more data than most.
Yes, you have.
That I think most men are good men, but you have a small batch. For all those reasons, that things are difficult. And don't forget too is that a lot of ladies are wild out here. It's like the dark tetrad are not just men.
Yeah.
Women are narcissists.
Yes.
Women are psychopaths. I've seen the stories of women chopping up dudes before. You know what I mean? Putting them in the closet, but doing it with a smile. So women are wild out here too.
It wants to come out my mouth. Like, I agree, but at the same time, I think it's important to look at both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
And on that note,
Yes.
every episode flips the script.
Okay. I like
So
it.
before we end, you can ask me any question about the work that I'm doing or the work that you've done.
Okay. I have a question.
Okay.
So I'm working on a little podcast.
Okay.
And there's a question that I am asking every guest
Okay.
of the podcast.
Love it.
And it's a question that gave me pause, brought up a lot of emotion for myself. And I want to ask you this question.
Okay, go.
So think a quick
feel like I
and
need to
then
just-
and then deliver it. Okay, so
Think.
if you think throughout your life, who did you have the most important conversation with, and what was the conversation about?
Well, the first person I think of is my dad, that's for sure. That's the first person that came to my mind. He has passed away, so that's why he came to my mind, because I can't have another conversation. So in thinking about what that conversation was, you know what? I can't think of what a conversation was. But what I can tell you is how his life and how he showed up in the world, what that now makes me tell myself on behalf of him, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So he actually, how old am I now? 33. So about 30 years ago, he started an association called the AGCA, which stands for the Afro-Caribbean Golf Association. And essentially, him and four of his friends in 1992 wanted to go and play golf. But when they got onto the course, they were faced with snubs, racism, all of the things you could imagine. And it didn't deter them from starting to play. They just decided, you know what, let's start our own thing, go together as a four, and then invite other boys, invite other guys, and let's just see what this can be. And as I said, 30 plus years later, the AGCA still exists.
Wow.
And then there's a tournament every year. There's two founding members, unfortunately, have passed away, one being my dad and one being another founding member. And every year they have a tournament in their honor.
Wow.
And I go, for my dad's one, I go and present the trophy to whoever won the tournament. And I think, although I can't remember an exact conversation, I'm getting emotional. Although I can't remember an exact conversation, what I think is that he was the first person to be the change he wanted to see. Yeah. And demonstrate that legacy is essential. because to have started something, it's a bit like what Jamal Edwards, that quote that flies around that Jamal Edwards always says, the goal is not to live forever, it's to create something that does. And I think I know that my dad has done that, because I now at 33 am still going to present the award to these guys who I grew up with. They're at my house all the time. I call them uncle, like all of this kind of stuff. So although I can't answer your question directly, indirectly, I think the most important conversation he had with me was by his actions, and that said to me, be the change you want to see.
Yes.
So yeah.
That's strong.
That's the answer to that question.
That's a beautiful answer.
Oof. Wow. Didn't expect this to go this way.
It's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the answer to that question. Wow, what a great question.
I'd say what's interesting is that too is now part of your father's legacy now stays with me as a result of you sharing that.
Yeah.
You know, now I have that, like, I'm going to go tell my boys that story. You know, it's one of those where his actions continue to live.
Yeah.
And that's your point.
Yeah. Yeah, that is my point. That is my point. Wow. Yeah, that is my point. Yeah. Oof. Okay. Well, Paul.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
It was an honor.
Always a pleasure. And before you leave, I do want to give you your flowers, because I remember when we went to brunch, I want to say it was brunchy kind of time. Yeah. Brunchy lunchy. Brunchy lunchy. And I was telling you about this transition and telling you about, look, I'm going to leave my full-time job. I'm going to start this thing about women's health and but I also might want to do this and And you said, listen, you have the potential to be world-class. I remember your words distinctly. You have the potential to be world-class. And I think if you're going to do that, you have to zero in on this 100%. I think it's an amazing idea. And you're also quite surprised at the landscape of gynecological care here versus the US. And you're like, oh, we didn't even know that kind of thing. And like starting anything new, it's scary. It's like some days are up, some days are down, some days are in the middle, some days are like, I'm making that decision. Should I be doing this? Oh, maybe I should go and do this. Oh, and you're literally amongst thinking about building a business and building legacy and building something for yourself that you can be proud of. So I just really appreciate your advocacy for this work, your support to me generally, but also for being one of the first guests on this podcast. So I just wanted to let you know that publicly as well.
Received. I'm always here.
Yeah, so I appreciate that.
Received. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, guys, thanks for listening to Womenstrual, the podcast. Yeah, love you. Bye.